The phone call from Franklin Roberts at First National Bank came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, his voice tense with the kind of professional concern that only comes from witnessing financial transactions that trigger every fraud detection system in the building. "Mrs. Hammond, we have a situation with your Platinum credit account that requires immediate attention," he said. His words carefully measured as he tried to explain how someone had just attempted to charge $47,000 in luxury purchases to an account that most people assumed belonged to a modest retiree living on a fixed income in suburban Cleveland. "I am Susan Hammond, 68 years old, and for the past 5 years I've been conducting the most expensive social experiment of my life, watching my daughter-in-law Vanessa Hamilton systematically reveal her true character while she remained completely unaware that the poor old woman she'd been manipulating and dismissing was actually worth $12 million from the dead sale of my manufacturing company." What Franklin was describing to me over the phone was the culmination of years of careful observation, as Vanessa had finally crossed the line from disrespect into outright theft. "She's currently at Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue, and has made stops at 3 jewelry stores," Franklin continued, his voice carrying the disbelief of someone who had handled my finances for 15 years and knew exactly how much money was in the account Vanessa was attempting to drain. "The purchases include designer handbags, shoes, jewelry, and what appears to be an entire new wardrobe. She's also attempted to book a spa weekend in Napa Valley and has made inquiries about a European vacation package." The irony was suffocating. While Vanessa was living out her fantasy of unlimited spending power, my son Henry was probably at his auto repair shop, covered in grease and working 16-hour days to keep his struggling business afloat, completely unaware that his wife had discovered what she believed was an opportunity to solve their financial problems through what amounted to credit card fraud. What Vanessa didn't know was that the mom's card Henry had casually mentioned during a recent argument about money wasn't the low-limit department store credit card she'd assumed it was. "Franklin, let her continue," I said, settling into my kitchen chair with a cup of coffee and the satisfaction that comes from watching a long-term plan reach its inevitable conclusion. "I want to see exactly how far she'll go when she thinks she has access to free money. But make sure you're documenting everything for legal purposes." The backstory of how we'd reached this moment stretched back 5 years to the day Henry had married Vanessa, a yoga instructor with champagne tastes and a beer budget who had immediately begun calculating how to leverage her new family connections for financial advantage. From the moment she'd moved into Henry's modest house near his auto shop, she'd been cataloging what she perceived as missed opportunities and financial limitations that were preventing her from living the lifestyle she deserved. But what Vanessa had never understood was that Henry's modest lifestyle was a choice rather than a limitation. The son I'd raised to value hard work and authenticity had deliberately chosen a blue-collar career that brought him satisfaction, even though his mother's wealth could have funded any business venture or lifestyle he desired. Henry's auto repair shop represented his independence and pride in honest work, not a failure to achieve financial success. The credit card that Vanessa had discovered in my purse during last Sunday's family dinner wasn't the senior citizen discount card she'd assumed it was. It was a Platinum account connected to investment portfolios, real estate holdings, and business assets that generated more monthly income than most people earned in a year. When Henry had casually mentioned Mom's card during their latest argument about money, he'd been referring to the emergency card I'd given him years ago for genuine family crises, not knowing that his wife would interpret this as permission to fund her personal shopping addiction. "Mrs. Hammond," Franklin continued, "should I be concerned about your safety? Has someone coerced you into giving them access to your accounts?" His question revealed the magnitude of what Vanessa was attempting to spend, amounts so large that bank security protocols required verification that the account holder wasn't being held hostage or manipulated by criminals. "Franklin," I replied, watching through my kitchen window as storm clouds gathered over Cleveland like a metaphor for the reckoning that was about to unfold, "the only person in danger today is a daughter-in-law who's about to learn that stealing from family has consequences she never imagined." building Hammond Manufacturing from a small machine shop into one of Ohio's most successful industrial suppliers. Had taken 38 years of 7-day work weeks, strategic partnerships, and the kind of calculated risk-taking that transforms family businesses into regional powerhouses. When I'd finally sold the company to a national corporation 3 years ago, the $42 million buyout had set me up for a retirement that could have included luxury travel, expensive hobbies, and the kind of conspicuous consumption that announces wealth to anyone paying attention. Instead, I'd chosen to maintain the modest lifestyle that had served me well during the lean years of building a business, partly because sudden displays of wealth felt uncomfortable, and partly because I wanted to observe how my family treated me when they believed I was living on a limited pension and Social Security payments. The 3-bedroom ranch house in Cleveland's Parma Heights neighborhood where I'd raised Henry was the same one I'd bought when he was 8 years old, kept not because I couldn't afford something grander, but because it represented the values and community that had shaped our family's character. Henry had grown up understanding that Mom worked long hours at the shop, but the complexities of manufacturing contracts, international shipping, and multi-million-dollar equipment purchases had been simplified into age-appropriate explanations about making parts for other companies. He'd learned the value of hard work by spending summers sweeping floors and organizing inventory, but he'd never fully grasped that Hammond Manufacturing had evolved from a family business into a regional industrial empire that employed over 200 people. The decision to let Henry pursue his passion for automotive repair rather than pressuring him to join the family business had been deliberate, based on my belief that authentic career satisfaction mattered more than family succession planning. Henry's mechanical aptitude and genuine love for problem-solving had led him to open Hamilton Auto Repair, a neighborhood shop that specialized in honest service and fair pricing rather than the kind of high-end restoration work that generated impressive profit margins. But what Henry didn't know was that his modest auto repair shop had been quietly supported by his mother's wealth through strategic business referrals, equipment financing at below-market rates, and insurance arrangements that kept his overhead costs manageable during Ohio's harsh economic climate. The struggle he believed he was experiencing independently was actually cushioned by invisible financial support that allowed him to build genuine business skills without facing the kind of catastrophic setbacks that destroyed most small automotive businesses within their first 5 years. Vanessa had entered our family dynamic 5 years ago with the confidence of someone who believed she understood financial planning and lifestyle optimization better than the working-class family she'd married into. Her background as a yoga instructor at Cleveland's most expensive wellness center had exposed her to affluent clients whose casual references to vacation homes, designer shopping, and exclusive experiences had created expectations that Henry's auto mechanic income couldn't possibly fulfill. From the beginning, Vanessa had made it clear that she viewed Henry's career choice as temporary, something he would eventually outgrow in favor of more lucrative opportunities that could support the lifestyle she'd observed among her yoga students. She'd researched franchise opportunities, suggested that Henry pursue automotive engineering certification, and consistently pushed him toward business expansion plans that would generate the kind of income necessary for the suburban prosperity she considered her due. My modest lifestyle had become a particular source of frustration for Vanessa, who saw my thrift store shopping and coupon clipping as evidence of financial limitations that reflected poorly on Henry's success and earning potential. She'd suggested multiple times that I should consider senior housing options that would be more appropriate for someone on a fixed income, calculations that would free up resources for Henry to invest in business expansion or family lifestyle improvements. But what had revealed Vanessa's true character was her attitude toward my contributions to family gatherings and celebrations. While I brought homemade dishes and thoughtful gifts that represented genuine care and attention, she consistently pushed for more expensive celebrations that would require Henry to stretch his finances beyond comfortable limits. Her constant comparisons between our family's modest celebrations and the elaborate events she'd witnessed among her affluent clients created ongoing tension that positioned me as an obstacle to the family's social advancement. The credit card she'd discovered during last Sunday's dinner had been sitting in my purse like a test I'd never intended to administer, waiting for the moment when someone's character would be revealed through their response to perceived opportunity and unlimited access to money they hadn't earned. The discovery that would lead to Vanessa's spectacular downfall had occurred during what was supposed to be a pleasant Sunday family dinner at my modest ranch house in Parma Heights, where the aroma of homemade pot roast and the sounds of Olivia practicing piano should have created the kind of peaceful family atmosphere that had sustained us through years of shared meals and celebrations. Instead, the evening had become a stage for Vanessa's growing frustration with what she perceived as her family's financial limitations and missed opportunities for advancement. "Henry, we need to talk about our budget situation," Vanessa had announced halfway through dinner, her voice carrying the kind of aggressive directness that suggested she'd been planning this confrontation for weeks. "I've been looking at our expenses, and we're barely keeping our heads above water while other families our age are building wealth and enjoying life. Something has to change." The something she was referring to involved a litany of lifestyle upgrades that included moving to a more prestigious neighborhood, taking family vacations that would require credit card financing, and expanding Henry's auto repair business through loans that would stretch their debt-to-income ratio beyond any reasonable limit. Her research into these improvements had apparently included detailed analysis of our family's spending patterns and what she considered wasted money on supporting my modest lifestyle. "Look at what we spend every month helping your mother," Vanessa had continued, gesturing toward me like I was a line item in a budget that needed elimination. "Groceries, utilities, that old car that constantly needs repairs. It's money we could be investing in our own future instead of subsidizing someone who should be in senior housing anyway." Olivia had immediately protested her mother's characterization of me as a financial burden, but Henry's uncomfortable silence felt like tacit agreement with his wife's assessment that supporting his mother was preventing their family from achieving prosperity. The conversation had continued with Vanessa presenting spreadsheets and financial projections that painted my continued independence as a luxury their family couldn't afford. The turning point had come when I'd excused myself to use the bathroom, leaving my purse on the kitchen counter where Vanessa had apparently decided to conduct an unauthorized investigation into my financial resources. What she'd discovered was my Platinum credit card, tucked behind my Medicare card and senior citizen discount passes in a wallet that probably looked like it contained the modest financial instruments of someone living on Social Security payments. When I'd returned to the dining room, Vanessa's demeanor had shifted noticeably, though I hadn't understood why until Henry had made an offhand comment during their continued argument about money. "Look, if things get really tight, we can always use Mom's card for emergencies," he'd said, referring to the backup credit line I'd established years ago for genuine family crises like medical emergencies or major car repairs. But Vanessa's interpretation of Mom's card had been entirely different. Looking at my thrift store clothes, my decade-old furniture, and my careful attention to grocery store sales, she'd apparently concluded that any credit card I possessed would have a low limit and minimal oversight, making it perfect for funding the lifestyle improvements she'd been craving without the scrutiny that would come from applying for legitimate financing. "That's actually a good idea," Vanessa had agreed, her voice carrying a note of excitement that should have warned Henry that his wife was planning something beyond emergency preparedness. "Sometimes older people have credit cards with better terms than younger families can qualify for. It might be smart to have that backup option available." The conversation had ended with Vanessa volunteering to help me organize my financial documents and medications, ostensibly to ensure that important information would be accessible during emergencies. What I'd realized later was that she'd been conducting reconnaissance, memorizing my credit card information, and probably researching ways to access accounts that she assumed belonged to someone with limited financial sophistication and minimal bank oversight. The week following that dinner had been filled with Vanessa's unusually helpful behavior, offering to drive me to medical appointments, volunteering to grocery shop on my behalf, and suggesting that I should treat myself to small luxuries that a woman my age deserved after years of careful budgeting. Each gesture had felt increasingly calculated, building toward what I now understood was her plan to test the limits of what she believed was a senior citizen's low-limit credit account. The moment of truth arrived on a gray Tuesday morning when Vanessa had called to suggest a girls' day out for shopping and lunch, proposing that we spend quality time together while she helped me select some new clothes and household items that would improve my quality of life. Her sudden interest in my well-being and appearance had been suspicious from the beginning, particularly since she'd spent 5 years suggesting that my modest lifestyle reflected poorly on Henry's success and her own social standing. "Susan, you deserve to treat yourself," Vanessa had said with the kind of forced enthusiasm that suggested she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed multiple times. "You've worked hard your entire life, and you should enjoy some of the finer things instead of always worrying about money. Let me take you somewhere nice where we can find you some quality pieces that will last." The somewhere nice had turned out to be Legacy Village, Cleveland's most upscale shopping destination, where stores like Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue catered to customers who viewed $1,000 handbags as reasonable purchases rather than mortgage payments. Vanessa had guided me through the parking lot with the confidence of someone who belonged in this environment, her designer yoga wear and expensive highlights, creating the impression that she was a regular customer introducing a visiting relative to luxury retail. But what had made the situation truly surreal was Vanessa's assumption that I would be overwhelmed and confused by the sophisticated shopping environment, requiring her guidance to navigate price points and payment options that someone of my modest background wouldn't understand. She'd spoken to sales associates with the authority of someone managing a financial incompetent, explaining that we were looking for age-appropriate items within a reasonable budget for someone on a fixed income. The first red flag had been her insistence on holding my purse while we shopped, ostensibly to prevent me from becoming confused or losing important items in the busy retail environment. She'd positioned herself as my helpful caregiver, making decisions about purchases and payment methods, while I played the role of the grateful elderly relative who needed assistance with financial transactions beyond her understanding. When we'd reached the checkout counter at Nordstrom with nearly $3,000 worth of clothes that Vanessa had selected, she'd smoothly produced my platinum credit card with the confidence of someone who believed she was conducting authorized business on behalf of someone too simple to manage her own finances. "We'll put this on Mom's card," she'd announced to the sales associate, her tone suggesting that this was a routine arrangement for family purchases. The transaction had been approved, without question, which had apparently emboldened Vanessa to suggest additional stops for shoes, accessories, and a few nice pieces of jewelry that would complement your new wardrobe. Each successful purchase had increased her confidence and expanded her interpretation of what constituted reasonable spending on someone else's credit account. But it was during our lunch at the shopping center's most expensive restaurant that I'd made the decision to let this situation fully develop rather than stopping Vanessa's increasingly bold theft. Her casual comment about making sure we get good value from your credit limit before it gets maxed out had revealed that she was deliberately attempting to drain what she believed was a modest account, treating my financial resources like a treasure hunt with a limited but exploitable prize. "You know, Susan," Vanessa had said while sipping a $40 glass of wine that she'd charged to my account, "I think we should plan another shopping trip next week. Maybe look at some furniture and home improvement items that would make your house more comfortable. You only live once, and you should enjoy your money instead of leaving it sitting in the bank." That's when I'd excused myself to call Franklin Roberts at First National Bank, explaining the situation and requesting that he monitor my account for unusual activity while allowing the transactions to continue. "Franklin, I want you to document everything," I'd instructed him. "This is going to be an expensive lesson, but it's one that needs to be taught before this behavior escalates further." The decision to enable Vanessa's theft rather than stopping it immediately hadn't been made in anger, though anger was certainly present. It was made with the understanding that some people need to fully reveal their character before consequences can be meaningful, and that half measures rarely teach the kind of lessons that prevent repeat behavior. The confrontation that would shatter. Vanessa's world arrived at 4:23 p.m. in the Saks Fifth Avenue accessories department, where she had just selected a $17,000 Cartier watch while explaining to the sales associate that her mother-in-law deserved something special after years of living modestly. Franklin Roberts' phone call had come through just as Vanessa was signing the credit card receipt with my name, her forgery skills apparently as well developed as her sense of entitlement and financial opportunism. "Mrs. Hammond, I'm calling from the bank's fraud prevention department," Franklin had said when I answered my phone, his voice carrying the controlled urgency of someone who had been monitoring increasingly alarming transactions throughout the afternoon. "We've detected over $47,000 in charges on your Platinum account today, and I need to verify that you're authorizing these purchases or if you're being coerced by criminals." The sales associate at Cartier had paused mid-transaction as she noticed my phone conversation, while Vanessa continued examining jewelry with the confidence of someone who believed she was conducting legitimate business with unlimited financial resources. What she couldn't hear was Franklin's detailed recitation of her spending spree: designer clothes, expensive shoes, luxury handbags, jewelry, spa services, and what appeared to be deposits on vacation packages that would cost more than Henry's annual income. "Franklin, I want you to call Henry's auto shop right now and ask him to come to Saks Fifth Avenue immediately," I said, loud enough for Vanessa to hear while still maintaining the pretense that this was a routine customer service call. "Tell him it's about his wife's use of my credit card, and that he needs to bring identification, because we're going to need to sort out some account irregularities." The change in Vanessa's expression was immediate and dramatic, her confident smile transforming into confusion, and then dawning horror as she began to understand that her mother-in-law's modest credit card was connected to banking relationships and account monitoring that she'd never anticipated. The sales associate stepped back diplomatically as the atmosphere in the jewelry department shifted from luxury shopping to family crisis management. "Susan, what's wrong?" Vanessa asked, her voice carrying forced casualness that couldn't disguise her growing panic. "Is there some problem with your card? Maybe we should just pay cash for these items and sort out the banking issues later." But it was too late for damage control or strategic retreat. Franklin's voice carried clearly through my phone as he confirmed that bank security had been tracking the unusual spending pattern and that law enforcement protocols would be triggered if we couldn't verify that these transactions were authorized by the legitimate account holder. "Mrs. Hammond," Franklin continued, "I need to inform you that the spending pattern we've observed today is consistent with credit card fraud, and we're required to report suspicious activity to the appropriate authorities unless you can confirm that you personally authorized someone to spend nearly $50,000 in a single afternoon." Henry arrived at appropriate authorities. Saks Fifth Avenue 20 minutes later, still wearing his work coveralls and carrying the smell of motor oil and honest labor into the perfumed atmosphere of luxury retail. His confusion was evident as he looked around the jewelry department, trying to understand why his mother and wife were surrounded by shopping bags and expensive merchandise while bank security personnel waited to verify identities and account authorizations. "Mom, what's going on?" Henry asked, his voice carrying the bewilderment of someone whose simple life had suddenly become complicated by circumstances beyond his understanding. "Franklin said something about Vanessa using your credit card, but I don't understand why that would involve bank security and fraud prevention." That's when I pulled out my phone and showed Henry the banking app that displayed my actual account balances, investment portfolios, and the $12 million in assets that had been generating the income Vanessa had been spending throughout the day. The numbers on the screen were so large that Henry actually stepped backward, his face cycling through disbelief, recognition, and devastation, as he realized that his wife had been attempting to steal from someone who could afford the theft but would never forgive the betrayal. "Vanessa," I said, turning to face my daughter-in-law, who was now pale with understanding, Did you really think you could steal $47,000 from family without consequences? Did you think I was too old and stupid to notice? 8 months after Vanessa's spectacular arrest in the Saks Fifth Avenue jewelry department, I sat in my unchanged kitchen reading the final divorce decree that officially ended Henry's marriage, while simultaneously reviewing college brochures that Olivia had been researching with the excitement of someone whose educational future was no longer limited by financial constraints. The same modest ranch house that Vanessa had once described as evidence of my poverty now served as headquarters for managing a $12 million estate while maintaining the simple lifestyle that had always brought me contentment and authentic relationships. Henry's transformation during the months following his wife's criminal charges had been both heartbreaking and inspiring to witness. The man who had spent 5 years apologizing for his mother's modest lifestyle and limited means had been forced to confront the reality that his poor mother was actually wealthier than anyone in his social circle, and that his wife's constant complaints about financial limitations had been based on greed rather than genuine hardship. "Mom, I can't believe I let her treat you that way," Henry had said during one of our weekly dinners at the kitchen table, where we'd begun rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of honesty rather than assumed limitations. "All those years of her complaining about supporting you, and you were probably helping us more than I ever realized. I failed you as a son, and I'm sorry." The revelation of my wealth had indeed explained many things about Henry's business success that he'd attributed to his own skill and hard work. The auto repair shop that had somehow survived Cleveland's economic downturns, the equipment financing that had been approved despite his limited credit history, the insurance arrangements that had kept his overhead manageable, all of it had been quietly supported by a mother who wanted her son to build genuine business skills, without knowing that safety nets were preventing catastrophic failure. Olivia's adjustment to her grandmother's revealed wealth had been the most positive aspect of the entire situation. Instead of being impressed by money, she'd been fascinated by the story of building a manufacturing empire from nothing, asking detailed questions about business strategy, leadership principles, and the decisions that had allowed me to create employment for hundreds of people while maintaining connections to the working-class community that had shaped my values. "Grandma Susan, I want to study business and engineering so I can build something like you did," Olivia had announced during one of our visits to the original Hammond manufacturing facility, which I'd arranged to show her the scale of what determination and strategic thinking could accomplish. "Not because I want to be rich, but because I want to create something real that employs people and contributes to the community." The legal consequences for Vanessa had been swift and appropriate. Credit card fraud involving amounts over $50,000 carried serious felony charges, and her assumption that family relationships would protect her from prosecution had proven spectacularly wrong. The plea agreement had included restitution, community service, and probation terms that would follow her for years, but the real penalty had been the complete destruction of her marriage and social standing in Cleveland's yoga and wellness community. But perhaps the most meaningful outcome had been the opportunity to establish honest relationships with Henry and Olivia based on mutual respect rather than assumptions about financial limitations or social status. Our weekly family dinners had become opportunities for genuine conversation about values, goals, and the difference between wealth that serves a purpose and money that becomes an end in itself. Henry had used his portion of my financial support to expand Hamilton Auto Repair into a full-service automotive center that employed 6 mechanics and specialized in honest service for working families who couldn't afford dealership prices. The business success that had once seemed impossible due to financial constraints was now thriving because Henry could focus on quality work rather than survival economics. The lesson extended beyond my own family situation to larger questions about character, assumptions, and the ways that hidden circumstances can reveal people's true motivations. Vanessa's willingness to steal from someone she believed was financially vulnerable had exposed a moral bankruptcy that no amount of money could fix, while Henry's genuine care for his mother during what he believed were her financially limited years had demonstrated the kind of character that deserved support and respect. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach us about the real cost of greed, the value of authentic relationships, and the difference between people who love you for who you are versus those who calculate your worth based on what they think they can extract from your generosity and trust.